The sound that stopped Ethan Cole cold wasn't a scream. It was laughter, sharp as ice, leaking from a half-closed classroom door. Ace pressed close to Ethan's leg, ears up, silent warning in amber eyes. Ethan's left knee ached as he leaned in, one hand tightening on a worn duffel strap. Inside, Lily Parker clung to her crutches, terrified, trying not to fall. The teacher's ruler snapped the air, her voice promising punishment if Lily messed up again. A few kids laughed louder, daring the next hit. And in that hallway, the calm of a former Navy SEAL turned dangerous. Subscribe, comment, and share to see justice served. The laughter behind the door. Winter sat heavy over Milwaukee, turning breath into smoke and sidewalks into glass. Ethan Cole parked 2 blocks from North Point Elementary because the curb in front was a mess of slush and impatient horns. Snow had fallen earlier in thin, stubborn sheets, just enough to make everything look cleaner than it was. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through seams and collars, the kind of cold that felt personal. He stepped out slowly, favoring his left knee without making a show of it. The navy winter coat fell to mid-thigh, the red and black plaid flannel visible at the open front, faded jeans stiff with the day's chill, brown leather boots finding traction where they could. At 40, he still looked built for harder weather than this. Tall, broad-shouldered, a square jaw with neatly trimmed beard and a few gray threads at the temples. Dark brown eyes that could warm when they chose and sharpen when they had to. Ace moved with him like a shadow that had learned discipline. The German Shepherd was 5, black and tan with ears that never seemed to relax. Amber brown eyes, steady and watchful. He didn't bounce or beg or announce himself. He tracked the world the way Ethan once tracked rooftops and doorways, reading small shifts in people's posture like weather changes. Ethan let Ace take the front of the scan. "Quick pickup," Ethan murmured, more to himself than to the dog. In and out. The truth was, he didn't like schools. They were too bright, too loud, too full of faith in rules. Places that assumed adults were always safe. Ethan had seen what happened when you trusted uniforms and titles without question. He crossed the street with care, feeling the sting in his knee when he stepped off the curb. The pain was old and familiar, a souvenir that didn't fit in a duffel bag. He kept his face neutral anyway. Calm was a tool. Panic was a gift you handed to the wrong person. Ace paused once at the edge of the sidewalk, nostrils flaring. Not alarmed, just collecting information. Then he moved again, silent paws on salted concrete, tail low, head level. The dog's attention drifted from the school doors to the people passing by, then back, then to the windows. Always back to the windows. North Point Elementary looked like a postcard someone had dropped in a puddle. Red brick, white trim, a cheerful banner that said Winter Kindness Week fluttering above the entrance. There was a row of little paper snowflakes taped inside the front windows, uneven and earnest. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Megan Parker. "Thank you again. Lily's in 3A. I'm stuck at the hospital. I'll owe you forever." Ethan stared at the message a second longer than necessary. Megan was in her early 30s, from the little Ethan had seen. Average height, tired posture, hair usually pulled back in a rushed ponytail, scrubs under a winter coat like she never had time to fully change roles. Her face had the look of someone who lived by alarms and shift schedules. The kind of woman who apologized for needing help even when she clearly did. He'd met her once at a neighborhood grocery store when Lily's crutch had slipped on a wet floor. Ethan had caught the girl before she hit the tiles. Megan had thanked him with the kind of gratitude that made him uncomfortable, because it was too big for something so small. But to Lily, it hadn't been small. Lily Parker was 9, maybe 10. Petite, narrow shoulders under a puffy jacket too large for her frame. Light brown hair cut to her chin with a side part, strands always escaping her clips. A pale face that tried to be brave, with wide eyes that watched adults the way Ace watched strangers. She used crutches and moved carefully, like every step was a decision she had to defend. Ethan hadn't asked for details about the injury. People offered pain stories too easily, like they needed to justify the space they took up. He had only said, "I can pick her up." And here he was. Inside, the heat hit his face and fogged his senses for a moment. The lobby smelled like wet mittens, marker ink, and that faint sweetness schools always carried, like someone was constantly baking hope in the background. A woman at the front desk looked up. She was in her late 50s, short, with a blunt gray bob and reading glasses on a beaded chain. A cardigan over a turtleneck. Her lips pressed thin before she let them soften. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice careful. Ethan gave a polite nod. "Pickup. Lily Parker." The secretary's eyes flicked to Ace, then back to Ethan. Her posture tightened just a fraction. Not fear exactly, more like caution from too many days of dealing with surprises. "You're on the list?" "I should be." Ethan kept his tone even. "Megan Parker texted the office this morning." The woman clicked her mouse, scanning. "Mr. Cole?" "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once, still watching the dog. "You can wait by the hallway. Classroom 3A is down that corridor, third door on the left. No pets in the building." Ace didn't move, just stared at her with calm, amber eyes. Ethan said, "He's trained." The secretary pursed her lips, then waved him through as if she'd decided to pick her battles. "Just keep him close." Ethan almost smiled. Ace couldn't get closer if he tried. The hallway was quieter than the lobby, muffled by classroom doors and bulletin boards layered with construction paper art. Winter scenes, penguins, mittens, a paper tree with student names on the leaves. It should have felt harmless. But Ace's ears shifted forward as they passed the first classroom. Ethan noticed it immediately. Not the dog's ears, the change in the air. It was subtle, like the moment right before a storm chooses where to land. The hallway temperature felt the same, but something else cooled. A tension that didn't belong in a place with finger painting. Ace slowed. Ethan slowed with him. From ahead, behind a half-closed door marked 3A, a sound spilled out. Not crying. Laughter. Sharp, careless, and loud enough to scrape against the walls. Ethan stopped so suddenly, his knee sent a hot warning up his thigh. He ignored it. His hand tightened around the strap of the worn duffel bag he used for everything. He hadn't planned to bring it inside. He'd just grabbed it out of habit, like he always needed one thing ready to go. Ace pressed against his leg. Solid, quiet. A silent warning that said, "Pay attention." Ethan leaned a fraction toward the gap in the door, keeping his body in the shadow of the hallway corner. Through the crack, he saw Lily near the front of the room. Crutches planted, small hands gripping the handles too tight. Her face flushed, jaw clenched in that desperate way children clench when they're trying not to cry in public. A woman stood over her. Ms. Dana Whitmore, early 40s. Medium height, rigid posture like her spine had been trained to never bend. blonde hair pulled into a tight bun that made her face look sharper. A thin mouth. Eyes that didn't soften when she looked at a child. She wore a fitted sweater and dark slacks, practical clothes that somehow felt like armor. In her hand was a ruler, lifted like a warning. Lily shifted, trying to adjust her balance. The ruler snapped through the air, not hitting yet, but close enough to make the message clear. A few kids laughed again. Not all. Some looked down. One boy in the front row stiffened, eyes darting like he wanted to disappear. Ethan's chest tightened in a way he recognized. It wasn't fear. It was the moment right before action. Ethan Cole didn't step in right away, because he needed to be sure what was happening couldn't be denied. But the instant Lily nearly buckled, Ace shifted forward one step, and Ethan understood it was worse than he'd feared. Silence that smelled like fear. Ethan kept his breathing slow, counting it the way he used to count footsteps in the dark. The crack in the door framed the scene like a punishment box. Lily stood in front of the whiteboard, crutches planted, shoulders pulled tight as if she could shrink into herself. Ms. Dana Whitmore hovered close enough to steal air, ruler in hand, her mouth moving in that steady, practiced way that sounded like teaching if you didn't listen to the words. Ace pressed against Ethan's shin. Not nervous, not loud, just present, like a hand on a shoulder before a storm. Ethan didn't step in yet. He needed the moment to be undeniable. Not for revenge, for protection. For a clean line between what happened and what would happen next. Inside the room, Whitmore's voice sharpened. "Stand up properly, Lily. If you can't handle a simple question without wobbling, you can stand at the front until you learn." Lily's cheeks glistened. She blinked fast, swallowing tears like they were something shameful. Her small hands clenched the crutch grips until her knuckles went pale. She shifted her weight, and her left crutch skidded a fraction on the tile. The room reacted the way predators react. A burst of laughter, a few snorts. Someone whispered something Ethan couldn't catch, but the tone carried. Kids laughed because it was safer than being the next target. Ace's ears lifted higher. His gaze cut to Lily, then to Whitmore, then back to Ethan. A question without a sound. Ethan's jaw tightened. He felt his left knee pulse, the old injury reminding him that violence always left receipts. He didn't want to be the man who solved everything with force. He didn't want to teach Lily that the world only stopped hurting you when someone bigger arrived. But he also knew this. Some people only stopped when the room changed. Whitmore snapped the ruler against the edge of her desk. Crack, crack. Not contact, but a promise. "Do you need me to correct you?" she said, too sweet. "Because I can correct you." Lily flinched anyway. That was the part that made Ethan's chest go hard. Not the ruler, not the laugh, the flinch. A child bracing for impact before it even came. Ethan pulled his phone from his coat pocket, thumb sliding to camera without looking down. He angled it through the door gap just enough to catch Whitmore, Lily, the raised ruler, and the class's faces. The phone's screen reflected in Ethan's eye like a tiny battlefield map. Ace stayed still, weight balanced, ready. If Ethan moved, Ace would move. If Ethan held, Ace held. Behind Ethan, footsteps clicked softly down the hallway. A man rounded the corner, late 30s, athletic build, close-cropped brown hair, a security badge clipped to his belt. Mr. Tyler Brooks. His uniform looked clean, pressed like it mattered. His expression looked tired, like he'd gotten used to avoiding things. He saw Ethan. He saw Ace. He slowed. "You can't be in the hallway during class time," Brooks said quietly, as if the words were routine. His gaze flicked to the door. The laughter leaked out again, and for a second, something in his face tightened. Then he smoothed it away. Ethan didn't turn his head. "I'm here for a pickup." Brooks shifted his weight. "Then you wait in the office." Ethan finally looked at him, not hard, just direct. "You hear that?" Brooks followed Ethan's eyes to the half-closed door. A ruler cracked again. Lily's voice, small and strained, tried to answer something. Brooks swallowed. "Ms. Whitmore runs a strict classroom." Ethan's voice stayed low. "Strict isn't what that is." Ace glanced at Brooks once, amber eyes steady. No growl, no bark. Just the kind of look that made adults suddenly remember they had manners. Brooks cleared his throat. I'll check on it." He didn't move. Ethan watched him, measuring the pause, not judging, assessing. Hesitation could mean fear, or complicity, or both. Inside the classroom, Whitmore's tone rose. "Speak up, or are you too fragile for a normal classroom?" Lily's breath hitched. Her crutch slipped again, a quick little slide. Whitmore stepped forward. The ruler came down, not on Lily's body, but hard on the top of Lily's crutch. The impact jolted the crutch sideways. Lily stumbled, arms pinwheeling, face flashing white. Ethan's entire system went cold. That wasn't discipline. That was endangerment. A deliberate shove dressed in authority. Ace's muscles tightened under his coat-side shadow. His body leaned forward, silent electricity. Ethan's thumb hit record. Brooks muttered, "Jesus," under his breath. Ethan held his position for 2 more heartbeats, forcing himself to see everything, to capture it. Lily catching herself by sheer panic and luck. Kids laughing louder. A few faces changing from amusement to alarm. Noah Kim in the front row going rigid, eyes wide, lips pressed tight like he was holding a confession behind his teeth. Whitmore turned slightly, scanning the room. This is what happens when someone thinks the world should slow down for them. Ethan's hand closed around his phone, like it was a weapon he didn't want to use. His other hand stayed on the duffel strap. He wasn't carrying anything dangerous, just habit, the weight of old routines. Ace shifted a half-step forward, placing himself closer to the door. Still silent, still obedient. But his presence was a warning flare. Ethan leaned closer to the gap. He could see Lily's eyes now. Not just tears. Fear. The kind that lives under the skin for weeks. Whitmore angled her head and smiled, like she could taste control. "Again," she said. "Answer me again. And if you wobble, you'll stay standing until the bell." Lily tried. Her voice cracked. Behind Ethan, Brooks finally moved. He took 1 step toward the door, then stopped again, as if an invisible line held him back. Ethan understood then that Brooks had seen this before. Maybe once, maybe often, and he'd chosen the easier path. Not evil, maybe, just weak. Sometimes weakness did the same damage. Ethan turned his head slightly, just enough to speak without losing the view inside. "If I open that door, you're going to call the principal," he said. Brooks blinked. "Sir, you're going to call him. Now." Ethan's voice stayed calm, the way it did when he needed chaos to obey. "Not after. Not later." Brooks stared at Ethan, then at Ace, then back at the door where Lily nearly fell again. Brooks pulled out his radio with a shaky hand. "Office, this is Brooks. I need Principal Gaines in hallway A. Now." Ethan felt something settle into place. The first piece of the board. Not justice yet, just positioning. Inside the classroom, Whitmore's ruler snapped again. "You hear me?" Lily's knees trembled. She shifted, and her crutch squeaked on tile. Ace's ears stayed forward. His gaze never left Lily. Ethan's mind ran like a checklist. Documented, witness present, authority notified, exit route clear, no unnecessary escalation. And still, it wasn't enough. Not while Lily stood there shaking. Ethan moved his hand to the door handle. It was cold metal, smooth, ordinary. 1,000 doors had felt like this before something changed forever on the other side. He didn't fling it open. He didn't kick it. He didn't storm in like a movie. He pressed down gently. The latch clicked, and the laughter inside faltered, like someone had cut power to a machine. Ethan paused, letting silence spread first. Then he began to push. The door opens. Ethan pushed the door the rest of the way with 2 fingers, slow enough that nobody could accuse him of barging in. The classroom smelled like dry erase markers, paper glue, and nervous sweat. Heat from the vents hummed along the baseboards. A clock ticked above the whiteboard, too loud in the sudden stillness. 30 little bodies froze in their seats. Their eyes moved the same way a flock moves when a shadow passes overhead. Ace stepped in beside Ethan without being told. No gear, no sound. Just that steady black and tan shape, ears up, amber eyes measuring the room in one sweep. Ace didn't aim at children. He aimed at risk. Ethan kept his shoulders relaxed. Navy coat open enough to show the red and black plaid flannel beneath. Faded jeans, brown leather boots. He held the worn duffel strap loosely in his left hand, letting it hang at thigh level like it belonged there. His right hand stayed visible and empty. He moved 1 step into the room and stopped. A former SEL didn't rush into unknown space. He claimed it. He took in the layout in one breath. Teacher's desk front right. Whiteboard behind Lily. Student desks in 3 neat columns. Closest exit behind him. Windows along the left wall. A stack of textbooks beside a space heater. A metal filing cabinet near the back that would block sightlines from the far corner. He noted the weak points automatically. Loose backpacks in the aisle could trip a child if panic started. A rolling cart near the board could become a hazard if shoved. The ruler in Ms. Whitmore's hand was not lethal, but it was a tool of control, and control was what made people dangerous. Ms. Dana Whitmore stood stiffly near Lily, ruler still raised as if the motion had been paused mid-swing. Early 40s, tight blonde bun, thin mouth, eyes that wanted to win more than they wanted to teach. She wore a fitted sweater and dark slacks, and everything about her posture said she expected the room to obey. Lily Parker stood at the front, crutches planted wrong because her hands were shaking. Her face was wet. Her chin trembled. She held herself upright with the kind of effort that should never be asked of a child. Ethan didn't look at Whitmore first. He looked at Lily. He walked in a straight line toward her, careful where he placed his boots so he didn't kick a backpack or clip a desk. His knee flared once, hot and sharp, but he didn't change pace. He stopped at Lily's left side, close enough that she could feel he was there, not so close that he crowded her. Ace followed and lay down at Lily's feet, angled slightly between Lily and the teacher. Not blocking the teacher, just altering the geometry of the room. Ethan lowered his voice. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly, as if it were a normal pickup. "It's Ethan. Your mom asked me to come get you." Lily's eyes snapped to him. She recognized him from the grocery store. Relief hit her face and immediately turned into sobbing, the way a dam breaks when it realizes it doesn't have to hold anymore. She reached for his coat with one trembling hand. Ethan's right hand came up, slow and open, and he placed it lightly on her shoulder. He didn't pull. He didn't hug. He stabilized. He gave her permission to breathe. "You're okay," he said. "Look at me. You're steady." Ace didn't move, only shifted his head enough to look up at Lily. A silent anchor. Ethan glanced once at the crutch tips. One was slightly skewed on the smooth tile, ready to slip. He adjusted his stance, then used 2 fingers to nudge the crutch base into a better angle. Not taking her crutch. Not taking her independence. Just taking away the chance of another fall. Then he stood. He turned to Ms. Whitmore at the speed of choice, not emotion. "Good afternoon," Ethan said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Ms. Whitmore's lips tightened. "Sir, you can't just come into my classroom." Ethan kept his hands visible. "I'm here to pick up Lily Parker." "She's in the middle of an exercise," Whitmore snapped, then caught herself, forcing the words into something smoother. "I was correcting her posture. It's for her own good." Ethan looked at the ruler, then at Lily's wet face, then back at the ruler. "Repeat what you said to her," he said. Whitmore blinked, as if she wasn't used to being asked for an exact quote. "Excuse me?" Ethan didn't step closer. He didn't invade her space. He simply held the room with stillness. "Repeat it," he said again, calm as a measured breath. "The part right before I opened the door." A few children shifted in their chairs. Someone's pencil rolled and hit the floor with a tiny clack. Noah Kim in the front row stared at his desk like it might swallow him. He was about 10, slim, black hair cut short, hoodie under a school sweater. His jaw worked once, like he was chewing on fear. Whitmore's eyes flicked to the kids, to the door, to Ace. Ace didn't stare at her. He stared at the ruler, then at Whitmore's wrist. The dog's focus made a quiet statement. If the ruler moves wrong, I move too. Whitmore swallowed. "I told her to speak up, that's all." Ethan nodded once, as if marking it down. "That's not what I heard." He let the words land gently, like placing weight on thin ice to test if it would crack. Whitmore's cheeks reddened. "This is inappropriate. You're disrupting my class. I'm going to have you removed." Ethan turned his head slightly toward the open door. Tyler Brooks stood in the hallway, half visible, radio in hand. Late 30s, close-cropped hair, security uniform, eyes darting like he wished he were anywhere else. He looked at Ethan like he wanted help, and at Whitmore like he feared consequences. Ethan didn't speak to Brooks. Not yet. He looked back at the class. "Everyone keep your seats," Ethan said, addressing the children, not the teacher. "Nobody's in trouble for being quiet right now." The kids froze harder, but the tone of his voice did something. It removed panic from the room. It made the air less sharp. Then Ethan returned to Whitmore. "Put the ruler down," he said. Whitmore lifted her chin. "I'll do what I need to do to maintain order." Ethan took one step, not toward her, but to the side. He shifted his body to put himself between Whitmore and Lily without closing distance. It was a small movement, precise, like moving a piece on a board. Ace's ears stayed forward. His body remained down, but the muscles along his shoulders tightened, ready to rise if needed. Whitmore's grip on the ruler tightened. Ethan's voice lowered further, almost conversational. "Ma'am, I watched you strike her crutch. I watched her nearly fall. If she hits the floor, that's an injury. If you raise that ruler again, that's escalation. You don't want that. For the first time, Whitmore's eyes showed something other than irritation. Calculation. She looked at Ethan's face, at his calm, at the way he wasn't begging or shouting. She looked at Ace, still and watchful. She looked at the children, suddenly too many witnesses. She flicked her gaze to the door. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, quick and heavy. A man's voice, strained. "What is going on?" Principal Harold Gaines appeared in the doorway, early 60s, tall but soft around the middle, salt and pepper hair combed back, glasses slipping down his nose. He wore a blazer over a sweater vest, the uniform of a man who believed problems could be smoothed out with meetings. He looked from Ethan to Ace to Lily's tears. Then he saw Whitmore's ruler. His face tightened like a knot pulled too hard. Ethan didn't speak first. He simply stepped half a pace back from Lily, giving the principal a clean line of sight to the child and to the teacher. He let the truth do the talking. Principal Gaines opened his mouth, but Whitmore spoke over him, fast. "He stormed in here," she said, pointing at Ethan. "With a dog. He's intimidating my students." Ethan raised one hand, palm open. Not in surrender, but in control. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said to Gaines. "I'm here for Lily Parker, and I recorded what happened in this room before I opened that door." Gaines stared at him. Whitmore's eyes flashed. Ace stayed silent, but his gaze didn't. And the room, for the first time, felt like it was holding its breath for something bigger than a lesson plan. Paper trails in the snow. The silence after Ethan mentioned the recording wasn't empty. It was crowded with choices. Principal Harold Gaines stood in the doorway like a man trying to remember which version of himself the job required. The warm hallway light outlined his blazer and sweater vest, and his glasses caught a dull glare from the classroom fluorescence. His eyes went from Lily's wet face to Ms. Whitmore's ruler to Ace, lying at Lily's feet like a living boundary. Ethan didn't move closer. He didn't raise his voice. He simply held his phone at waist height, screen dark, the way you hold a match you haven't struck yet. "I recorded what happened before I entered," Ethan repeated, each word measured. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to remove Lily from danger." Whitmore's mouth tightened into a line. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "He's manipulating the situation. He's a stranger. He brought an animal into my classroom." Ace's gaze stayed on her hands, not her face. The dog's stillness had its own weight. Gaines cleared his throat, trying to sound like policy. "Mr. Cole, let's take this to my office." Ethan nodded once. "Lily comes with us." Whitmore gave a short, sharp laugh that didn't match the posters on the walls about kindness. "She's in my class. She stays until dismissal." Ethan turned his head just enough to look at Lily. The girl's grip on her crutches trembled. She wasn't afraid of Ethan. She was afraid of being left alone again. Ethan lowered his voice. "Lily, can you walk with me?" Lily's lip quivered. She nodded, a tiny motion that took all her strength. Ethan shifted his stance, positioning himself between Lily and Whitmore without stepping into Whitmore's space. It was the same controlled geometry. Protect without provoking. "Ace," Ethan said quietly. Ace rose in one smooth motion and moved half a step closer to Lily's right side. Not touching, not crowding. Just there, like a rail you could hold without shame. Whitmore's ruler twitched. Ace didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply fixed his eyes on the ruler again, ears forward, body ready. The room felt the warning even if nobody could explain it. Gaines saw it too. His gaze flicked to Whitmore's hand, then away, like he didn't want to admit what he was seeing. "Ms. Whitmore," Gaines said, voice tight, "put the ruler down." Whitmore's cheeks reddened. "Harold?" "Now," Gaines said. The ruler lowered slowly, as if it weighed more than wood. Ethan helped Lily take her first step, watching the crutch tips, watching the tile, watching the children's faces. Noah Kim's eyes met Lily's for a moment. The boy's face looked sick with guilt, like he wanted to say something and didn't yet know how. Ethan guided Lily toward the door, careful with his knee, careful not to jostle her. Ace matched their pace, silent and steady. They moved as a unit. In the hallway, Tyler Brooks stood a few feet back, radio still in hand, expression drawn. His shoulders were stiff, and his eyes kept darting down the corridor like he expected someone to be watching. Ethan clocked that immediately. Fear had a smell. It was the same everywhere, whether it lived in trenches or in school hallways. Gaines led them toward the main office. The walls were lined with framed photos of past graduating classes, smiling faces under captions like Pride and Community. Ethan's bootsteps sounded too loud against the polished floor. In the office, Gaines gestured to a small conference room with a glass window. "In here." Ethan didn't sit. He positioned Lily in a chair closest to the door, where she could leave fast if she needed to. He stood between her and the window. Ace lay down at Lily's feet again, angled toward the hallway. Gaines noticed the positioning. He didn't comment. Whitmore arrived seconds later, stiff with fury, followed by Tyler Brooks, hovering near the doorway, like a man who wanted an excuse to disappear. Gaines closed the door, then sighed. "Mr. Cole, show me what you recorded." Ethan unlocked his phone and held it so Gaines could see. He didn't shove it into Whitmore's face. He didn't make a show. He simply let the footage play. Whitmore's voice came through, crisp and cold. The ruler snapping the air. The moment it struck Lily's crutch. Lily's sharp inhale. The children's laughter bursting and then faltering. Gaines watched without blinking. When the clip ended, the room stayed quiet for a long beat. Whitmore recovered first. "That's out of context," she said quickly. "I was trying to teach resilience. This is a special education issue, and I'm not trained to handle the disruption Lily causes. I requested support months ago." Ethan didn't argue. He asked a question instead. "Support from who?" Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "From you people. From the district." Gaines's jaw flexed. He looked at Lily, then away, like looking at her was too direct. Ethan saw the dodge. He turned to Tyler Brooks. "You said she runs a strict classroom." Brooks flinched at being addressed. I said..." "You've seen this before," Ethan said, not accusing, stating. "How many times?" Brooks swallowed. His face went pale under the office lighting. "Sir, this isn't..." Ethan kept his tone calm. "How many?" Brooks glanced at Gaines, then at Whitmore, then at Lily, and something in his eyes shifted, as if he'd finally run out of places to look away. "More than once," Brooks admitted. Whitmore snapped, "Don't you dare!" Ethan didn't raise his voice. "So why didn't it stop?" Brooks's fingers tightened on his radio. Because every time someone complained, it got handled." The word "handled" landed wrong, like it came with fingerprints. Gaines's eyes flicked up sharply. "Tyler." Brooks swallowed again. "There's a file," he said, voice low. "Complaints, parent meetings, emails. But they don't stay where they're supposed to. They get moved." A small cruelty that was protected didn't happen by accident. It happened because it served someone. "Moved where?" Ethan asked. Brooks hesitated. Ace lifted his head slightly, ears forward. Not aggressive, just attentive, like he could sense the truth trying to hide. Brooks's gaze dropped to the floor. "To the district compliance office," he said. "And then they come back. Closed." Whitmore's eyes hardened. "That's called procedure." Ethan looked at Gaines. "Do you have access to those complaint records?" Gaines's mouth opened, then closed. "It's complicated." Complicated was what people said when the simple truth would cost them. Lily made a small sound, like a breath that wanted to be words. Ethan crouched slightly, keeping his body between her and the adults who were debating her life like paperwork. "Lily," he said softly, "have you told your mom about this?" Lily shook her head fast, eyes filling again. "She's tired," she whispered. "She works. If I make trouble, we'll have to move." Whitmore's smile flickered, thin and satisfied, as if Lily had confirmed a strategy. Ethan felt something cold run through him that had nothing to do with Milwaukee winter. This wasn't just a mean teacher. This was leverage. Ethan straightened, his voice still calm. "Who told you you'd have to move?" Lily's gaze flicked toward Whitmore, then away. She didn't answer, but her silence was loud. Gaines stood abruptly. "That's enough. Ms. Whitmore, you will step out while I speak with Mr. Cole and Lily." Whitmore laughed once, sharp. "You're going to believe a traumatized child and a stranger with a dog?" Gaines's face tightened. "I'm going to believe what I saw." Whitmore leaned closer to the table, eyes on Ethan. "You think you're doing something heroic," she said, low enough that it felt like poison. "But you don't know who you're stepping on." Ethan met her gaze without blinking. "I know exactly what I'm stepping on," he said quietly. "Cruelty." Whitmore's eyes flashed. She turned and walked out, heels clicking like a metronome for trouble. The moment the door shut, Gaines exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "I need you to understand," Gaines said, voice rough. "This school has a reputation. Donors, board members. If this becomes public..." Ethan didn't let him finish. "If this stays hidden, a child keeps getting hurt." Gaines rubbed his forehead. "There were complaints," he admitted. "Not just about Ms. Whitmore, about retaliation. Parents being encouraged to transfer, quietly." Ethan's mind sharpened. Encouraged by who? Gaines hesitated again, then glanced toward the glass window as if someone might be listening. "District liaison," he said finally. "A woman named Karen Duvall." The name meant nothing to Ethan yet, but the way Gaines said it did. Like a door you didn't open unless you wanted something to come through. Brooks shifted closer, voice urgent. "She comes here sometimes," he said. "And when she does, people stop talking." Ace rose without a sound and moved to the glass window, staring down the hallway. His ears angled forward, body rigid for the first time. Ethan followed Ace's gaze. Outside the conference room, down the corridor, a woman in a long camel coat walked toward the office, purposeful and fast. Mid-40s, sharp haircut, phone in hand. Her eyes weren't curious. They were hunting. Ethan didn't move, but his voice dropped. "Is that her?" Gaines went pale. "Yes," he whispered. "That's Karen Duvall." Ace didn't bark. He just stood there, silent as a warning sign, as the woman's footsteps grew closer to the door. "Enough," quietly said. Karen Duvall's footsteps stopped just outside the conference room door. For a beat, nobody moved. Not Ethan, not Principal Gaines, not Tyler Brooks. The only motion came from Ace, standing near the glass, ears forward, body still as a warning sign. Ethan watched the reflection first. He caught Karen's outline in the window, the camel coat, the sharp angle of her chin, the phone in her hand like an extension of authority. Mid-40s, lean build, hair cut in a clean, severe bob. Her face carried the calm confidence of someone used to walking into rooms and owning them. Ethan kept his posture neutral, hands visible, weight balanced, left knee kept steady. He angled his body half a step so Lily stayed behind him and close to the door. It wasn't dramatic, it was practical. If the room turned chaotic, Lily had the shortest path out. The handle turned. Karen stepped in without waiting to be invited. Her eyes swept the room in a quick, practiced scan. The crying child, the serviceable conference table, the principal's anxious posture, the security officer's guilt, and finally, Ethan's calm. Then she noticed Ace. Her expression didn't change, but her steps slowed by a fraction. "Principal Gaines," Karen said, voice smooth as polished glass. "I'm told there's a situation." Gaines cleared his throat. "Yes, there is." Karen's gaze shifted to Lily, as if Lily were a form that had been filled out wrong. "And who is this man?" Ethan didn't answer with anger. He answered with clarity. "Ethan Cole," he said. "I'm here to pick up..." Shrink it until it fit inside policy. Gaines looked trapped between two worlds. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Karen's eyes sharpened. "Harold, I'm trying to protect the school." Ethan watched her hands. No trembling, no fidgeting. She was in control, or believed she was. People like that didn't plead. They positioned. Ace stayed still, gaze fixed on Karen's wrist and the phone. Ethan spoke again, tone even. "Lily was humiliated and put at risk. Her crutch was struck. She nearly fell." Karen's eyes flicked to Ethan, then down to Lily. "Children exaggerate. Parents exaggerate. That's why we have procedures." Lily flinched at the word exaggerate. Ethan shifted his stance an inch, blocking Karen's line of sight to Lily's face. He didn't hide Lily. He shielded her from being studied like evidence. "Procedures don't erase what happened," Ethan said. Karen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly, then looked back at Gaines. "We have donors coming next week. Board members." If this becomes a scene, it hurts everyone. Hurts everyone meant protects the people who mattered to her. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "It hurts a child right now." Karen turned her head slightly toward Tyler Brooks. "Officer Brooks, escort Mr. Cole and his animal out of the building. Then I'll speak with you, Harold." Brooks didn't move. Ethan didn't move either. He watched the security officer's face. The man's conflict was visible now, like a crack in glass. Brooks swallowed. "Ma'am, I called the principal because I heard what was happening." Karen's eyes narrowed, almost imperceptibly. "And you did your job. Now finish it." Brooks's gaze dropped. Then he looked at Lily. Something shifted in him. The kind of shift Ethan had seen in men when they finally chose a side. "No," Brooks said quietly. The word landed like a door locking. Karen's face tightened. "Excuse me?" Brooks straightened, shoulders squaring. "No, ma'am. I'm not escorting him out." I watched the teacher strike the crutch. I heard the comments. "This isn't a misunderstanding." Gaines stared at Brooks, surprised by his own employee. Karen's tone dropped. "You realize what you're doing?" Brooks's hands trembled, but he kept them at his sides. "Yeah," he said. "I do." Ethan didn't reward it with praise. Not yet. He simply nodded once, as if acknowledging a completed step in a plan. Karen's eyes shifted back to Ethan. "You think you can bully a district office into action because you wore a uniform once?" Ethan's eyes stayed steady. "I'm not bullying anyone. I'm documenting harm." Karen's gaze snapped to the phone in Ethan's hand. Ethan understood immediately. The risk wasn't that she would yell. The risk was that she would seize the evidence or pressure Gaines into deleting it. He moved first. Not fast, not aggressive, just precise. He tapped his screen and sent the video to Megan Parker with a short message. "Proof. Keep this safe." Then he tapped again and sent it to his own email. 2 seconds. 2 secure exits. Evidence no longer trapped in one device. Karen saw the motion and stiffened. "What did you just do?" Ethan met her gaze. "Made sure the truth doesn't disappear." For the first time, Karen's composure slipped. Her voice sharpened. "Harold, this is exactly the kind of reckless escalation I warned you about." Gaines's face reddened, not with shame, but with something closer to anger at being managed. "Reckless?" Gaines said. "A child was being threatened, in my school." Karen stepped closer, voice low. "Think about your job." Ethan watched Gaines's hands. The principal's fingers were clenched, then slowly unclenched. He looked at Lily again. That was the moment Ethan recognized. A man remembering why he took the job in the first place. Gaines spoke, each word firm. "Ms. Duval, I'm placing Ms. Whitmore on immediate leave. I'm filing a formal report with the district superintendent, and I'm requesting an external review." Karen's eyes widened slightly. "You can't." "I can," Gaines said. "And I will." Karen's mouth opened again, then closed. She glanced at Brooks, who held his ground. She glanced at Ethan, who didn't flinch. Then she looked at Ace, who simply stared back with quiet certainty. Karen's shoulders lifted with a controlled inhale. Then she did what people like her always did when they lost ground in public. She retreated into formality. "Very well," she said. "I expect documentation. I expect compliance. And I expect discretion." Ethan's voice stayed flat. "I expect Lily to be safe." Karen turned and left the room. Her heels clicked down the hallway, faster now, less controlled, like she could feel the building turning against her. The room exhaled. Lily made a small sound. Ethan looked down and saw her eyes fixed on the floor, as if she didn't trust relief yet. Ethan crouched, careful of his knee. "You did nothing wrong," he said softly. "Not today." "Not any day." Lily's face crumpled and then steadied. She nodded once, tiny and brave. Ace shifted closer and gently pressed his shoulder against Lily's shin. Warm weight, no noise, just presence. Gaines cleared his throat, his voice rough. "Lily, I'm sorry." The apology was clumsy, but it was real. Brooks stared at his shoes like he'd never seen them before. "I'm sorry too," he said. I should have stopped it sooner. Ethan stood again. You stopped it now, he said, not forgiving the past, but giving the man a way forward. In the hallway outside, the building felt different, less bright, more honest. As they walked toward the office lobby, a few teachers looked up, sensing something had changed. A student peeked around a corner, then stepped back. Noah Kim stood by a bulletin board, pale and stiff. When Lily limped past, Noah's shoulders shook once. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he whispered. Lily hesitated, then looked at Ethan. Ethan didn't tell her what to do. He simply held still, letting the choice be hers. Lily nodded, a small acceptance that wasn't forgiveness yet, but wasn't rejection either. Noah's eyes filled. He wiped them quickly and looked away, embarrassed. Outside, the winter air hit them like a slap, but the sunlight had edged out from behind the clouds. The snow on the steps glittered. Cars passed. Life continued. Megan Parker's car skidded into the pickup lane a minute later, wipers frantic, cheeks flushed from rushing. She jumped out, early 30s, hair in a messy ponytail, hospital scrubs under a thick coat. Her face was exhaustion and fear stitched together. Lily, she breathed. Lily moved forward on her crutches, faster than she had earlier, and Megan wrapped her in a careful hug, avoiding the crutches, holding her like she was made of glass and steel at the same time. Megan looked up at Ethan, eyes wet. What happened? Ethan kept it simple. You'll see. I sent you the video. Megan's hand flew to her phone. Her face changed as the screen showed the message. Anger, grief, then a kind of relief that was almost a sob. Gaines stepped outside, shoulders squared. Mrs. Parker, I'm meeting with you today. We're correcting this. Megan stared at him. You mean it? Gaines nodded. I mean it. Brooks stood behind him, silent, looking like a man who'd finally chosen to be useful. Ethan watched Lily's face as she leaned into her mother's coat. The girl's breathing slowed. Her shoulders dropped. The trembling eased. Ace sat beside Ethan, ears still up, eyes calm. Ethan didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired. But it was a clean tired, the kind that came from doing the right thing without needing applause. Megan touched Lily's cheek. I'm so sorry I didn't know. Lily's voice was small. I didn't want you to be sad. Megan's laugh broke through her tears, soft and shaky. Honey, I'm sad when you're hurt. I'm strong when you tell me. Ethan looked away for a second, staring at the snow piled against the curb. He hadn't expected a school hallway to bring back the same weight he carried from overseas. But it had. And now, watching a mother and daughter find their way back to each other, he felt something in his chest unclench. Gaines spoke carefully. Mr. Cole, thank you. Ethan shook his head once. Don't thank me, he said. Fix it. Gaines nodded. We will. Ethan turned to Lily. You ready to go home? Lily looked at Ace. The dog's tail thumped once against the snow, the smallest celebration. Lily smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just real. Yeah, she said. I'm ready. They walked to Megan's car together, the winter air sharp, the sunlight pale but steady. Behind them, North Point Elementary stood quiet, but different. Not perfect, just awake. And sometimes, awake was where healing started. Some winters don't just freeze the streets. They test hearts. And in a quiet school hallway, a child learned she was not alone. If you believe God places protection where it's needed most, then you understand moments like this. Not always with thunder. Sometimes it arrives as calm courage, steady hands, and a loyal dog who stands like a shield without making a sound. Ace did not need a voice to be brave. His loyalty was a small miracle. The kind that reminds people that love can still hold the line when fear tries to take over. And maybe that is the lesson to carry home. Real strength is gentle. Real justice is steady. And when someone finally says, "Enough," the whole room can change. Share if you believe in angels with paws. Comment "Amen" to bless our veterans. Subscribe for the next story.